The metallic click of the front door closing echoed in the sudden, cavernous silence of our home, a sound that, for 15 years, had always signaled warmth, return, and the comforting end of a day. This time, it felt like a final, unceremonious punctuation mark to everything I thought I knew. I stood rooted to the spot in our living room, Persian rug feeling impossibly soft beneath my feet, yet the ground beneath me felt like it had vanished entirely. Sarah's words, delivered just moments ago with a chillingly detached calm, still swirled in my head. I think we should break up, Alex. It's not working anymore. If you've ever had a moment like that, where a sentence, just a handful, of words can obliterate your entire reality. It's not a dramatic explosion, not a shouted argument. It's a quiet, surgical strike, precisely aimed at the very core of your existence. The air itself feels thin, hollow, as if the oxygen has been sucked out of the room, leaving behind only the ghost of what was. I remember the way the late afternoon, light usually so golden and inviting through our bay window, now seemed harsh, illuminating dust motes dancing in the sudden emptiness she left behind. Sarah had looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Not anger, not sadness. Just a sort of blank resolution. It was a face I didn't recognize. Certainly not the face of the woman who had promised me forever. It's the woman who had nestled into my arms every night for a decade and a half. You're watching Reddit stories? You're home for the most gripping stories of betrayal, karma, and the long road to justice. To witness every twist in this journey, make sure you're subscribed and the notification bell is on. Our life before this moment had been a tapestry woven with comfortable routines and unspoken understandings. Mornings began with the shared scent of coffee and her soft murmurings as she scrolled through her phone. Evenings ended with my hand finding hers on the couch, the quiet hum of a show playing in the background. We rarely argued, and when we did, they were small, quickly resolved skirmishes over misplaced keys or forgotten groceries. We were, by all outward appearances, the couple people envied, stable, devoted, almost telepathically connected. We were Alex and Sarah, a unit, a fortress against the world's chaos, yet now I see the cracks. The subtle shifts I'd dismissed, the small moments that hinted at a deeper disquiet within Sarah. She'd started asking questions, seemingly innocuous at the time, about my future plans, about whether I was truly happy with our comfortable, predictable life. She'd occasionally needle me about a lack of spontaneity, a perceived predictability in my affection. I'd laughed, pulled her close, assured her of my unwavering love, confident that these were just minor ripples in an otherwise serene pond. She would watch my reactions then, her eyes a shade too sharp, a flicker of something unreadable behind them. It's horrifying, isn't it, to look back and see all the tiny red flags you so easily painted white. You tell yourself it's love, it's comfort, it's just how long-term relationships evolve. But sometimes those quiet observations, the dismissed anxieties, are actually seismic. Tremors, the ground isn't just shifting, it's preparing to split wide open. And you, oblivious, are standing right on the fault line. I found my voice, or what was left of it. Sarah, I heard myself say the name, a raw whisper. What are you talking about? Not working anymore? Since when? She avoided my gaze, picking at a loose thread on the sofa cushion. It's just, I've been feeling this for a while, Alex. We're in different places. I need more excitement, more passion, and I don't think you can give that to me. Her words were like carefully chosen daggers, each one hitting a specific nerve, yet delivered with a clinical precision that suggested rehearsed lines. My mind raced, scrambling for an explanation. A logical flaw in her argument. Different places. We literally just planned our vacation to Italy next year. Talked about redoing the kitchen. We talked about everything. The desperation was starting to creep into my voice, despite my efforts to contain it. I felt a cold dread curling in my stomach, coiling tighter with every passing second. This wasn't an argument. Was a pronouncement. There's a strange primal instinct that kicks in when you're cornered, apart. Of you wants to fight, to scream, to tear down the walls that are suddenly closing in. But another part, a quieter, more ancient voice whispers about dignity, about self-preservation. It's the battle between the heart that wants to beg and the soul that refuses to grovel. In that moment, the fight wasn't for her, but for myself. She finally met my eyes, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flash of something unreadable. Was it doubt? Uncertainty? Or just a momentary crack in her facade of indifference? "I'm sorry, Alex," she said, her voice softer now, almost regretful, but still firm. "My decision is made. I don't see a future for us." The softness was almost worse than the coldness. It felt like pity. And that was a feeling I absolutely refused to accept. A sudden, sharp clarity pierced through the fog of shock. If she could deliver such a devastating blow with such a calm, rehearsed demeanor, then my begging wouldn't change her mind. It would only diminish me. My jaw tightened, a muscle throbbing with the effort to control the tremor in my voice. "Kay," I said, the word barely audible. "If that's truly how you feel, that's what you want?" I watched her, searching for any sign, any flicker of hesitation, any indication that she was waiting for me to argue, to fight back. There was none. Only that same unsettling calm. It's a bizarre revelation, isn't it? To realize that the person you've poured your entire existence into, the one whose happiness you prioritized above your own, can look at you and simply decide you're no longer enough. The betrayal isn't just in the words, but in the casualness of their delivery. The sheer lack of emotional investment in shattering your world. It makes you question not just them, but yourself. Were you ever truly seen, truly loved, or just a convenient placeholder? A heavy silence settled between us, thick and suffocating. Sarah shifted her weight, a nervous tremor, perhaps, or a subtle sign of her own discomfort. She had expected a scene, I realized. She had anticipated my pleas, my desperate arguments, my shattered tears, my quiet acceptance, my dignified retreat. It was clearly not part of her script. Her eyes, which had held that blank resolution, now flickered with a hesitant surprise. Then something that looked alarmingly like panic. I took a slow, deliberate breath, the air burning in my lungs. "I'll start looking for a place tomorrow," I said, my voice steadier now, almost unnervingly so. "I'll pack my things this week. We can figure out the logistics later." The house, the finances. I trailed off, suddenly weary of the words. What was there to figure out, really? It was all broken. The raw, immediate pain of a breakup is often what people expect. The floods of tears, the emotional collapse. But sometimes there's a deeper, colder shock. It's the practical, logistical horror of untangling two lives that were once so intricately woven. It's the surreal act of planning your own displacement, packing away not just belongings, but memories, futures, and the very identity you built with someone else. I walked past her, my gaze fixed on the hallway, heading towards our bedroom. Her eyes followed me, wide now, a faint line forming between her brows. She seemed to realize in that moment that I wasn't playing a game. This wasn't a bluff. This was real. My legs felt heavy, each step a conscious effort. Yet there was a strange, unsettling clarity in my movements. I pulled my old duffel bag from the top of the closet, the one I hadn't used since college, and tossed it onto the bed. The muted thud of the bag landing felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. I started pulling out clothes from my side of the closet, shirts, jeans, sweaters, each item folded with a deliberate slowness. Felt like a concession, a surrender, not to her, but to the harsh reality she had just imposed. I could feel her presence in the doorway, her silent watch. There was a subtle shift in the air, a tension that indicated her growing unease. She cleared her throat, a small, tentative sound. Alex, wait, what are you doing? Her voice held a note of genuine surprise, almost disbelief. There's a strange power in not reacting the way people expect. When someone throws a punch, they anticipate you to flinch, to crumble. When you meet it with a quiet, resolute stance, it destabilizes them. It makes them question not your strength, but their own perceived control. It's a silent defiance that speaks volumes, revealing more about them than about you. I didn't turn around. I kept folding a shirt, smoothing out the wrinkles. He said, "You want to break up, Sarah?" "I'm breaking up," I replied, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "What else am I supposed to do? Beg? Fight for someone who doesn't want me?" The words, though calmly spoken, hung in the air like sharp shards of glass, reflecting her actions back at her. I heard a sharp intake of breath from her, a sudden, almost desperate gasp. I opened the top drawer of my dresser, pulling out socks and underwear, methodically tossing them into the duffel bag. My hands moved steadily despite the earthquake raging inside my chest. I heard her take a hesitant step into the room, then another. But Alex, I didn't mean. Not like this. Her voice was soft, laced with a vulnerability I hadn't heard from her in weeks, maybe months. It was the sound of a carefully constructed facade beginning to crack, revealing the panic beneath. That's the thing about tests, isn't it? The person who devises them often believes they control every variable, every possible outcome. They expect a specific reaction, a predictable dance of emotions. But life and human dignity are rarely so compliant. Sometimes the most unexpected reaction is no reaction at all, a quiet, resolute acceptance that shatters their carefully crafted scenario and forces them to confront the true, unintended consequences of their actions. I finally turned to face her. Her eyes were wide, a flicker of genuine fear in their depths. The blank resolution was gone, replaced by something akin to horror. She saw me not as a broken man, but as a man who was genuinely, quietly, and irrevocably moving on. The packed duffel bag lay open on the bed between us, a stark, undeniable symbol of a future she had deliberately, yet unknowingly, dismantled. She extended a hand, then let it drop, speechless. I picked up the duffel bag, zipped it closed with a firm pull, and swung it off the bed. It felt light, yet it carried the weight of a shattered future. I met her gaze, no longer pleading, no longer desperate, just tired. The duffel bag, packed and waiting by the door, felt like a gravestone in our once shared home. Every time I looked at it, the silent, dignified acceptance I had shown Sarah in that moment of breakup felt less like strength and more like a cruel, self-inflicted wound. I'd walked away from her stunned face, the dawning horror in her eyes. But the emptiness inside me was a vast, echoing chasm. My world had fractured and I was grappling with the shards, trying to figure out which ones still belonged to me. Isn't it strange how grief doesn't always arrive with a bang? Sometimes it's a slow, insidious seep, dissolving the colors from your life one shade at a time. The world doesn't end. It simply loses its vibrancy. You keep breathing, keep moving, but everything feels muted, as if life is playing on a lower volume. And you're just waiting for the music to kick back in, even if you know it never truly will. The first few days were a blur of practicalities. I spent hours online searching for apartments, each listing a stark reminder of the life I was losing. I called real estate agents, my voice flat and emotionless, discussing lease agreements and security deposits. My conversations with Liam, my best friend, were short, punctuated by his concerned pauses. "You okay, man?" he'd ask, and I'd just nod into the phone, muttering something about handling it. I wasn't okay, not by a long shot, but I was moving forward, one numb step at a time, because what else was there? Sarah, meanwhile, began her desperate, often transparent attempts to derail my path. I'd find small, sentimental objects left conspicuously in my way. A framed photo from our honeymoon casually propped on the kitchen counter. A concert ticket stub from years ago tucked into my jacket pocket. Each item was a silent, calculated plea designed to tug at memories to break my resolve. She'd watch me furtively from the corner of her eye, waiting for a crack in my composure, a sign that her test was working. But all she saw was my quiet, methodical packing. It's an unsettling experience to realize you're being manipulated, even when the manipulator believes they're acting out of love or insecurity. Every sentimental gesture becomes tainted. Every soft word a calculated move. The genuine emotion you once shared is now twisted into a weapon, used to try and force a reaction. You start to see strings where you once saw connection, and the weight of that realization is almost as heavy as the heartbreak itself. She started leaving the door to her study ajar when I was in the living room, allowing the faint strains of our song to drift out, or the muffled sound of a romantic comedy we used to watch together. She'd cook my favorite meals, the aroma filling the house, then leave the untouched plates on the counter, as if expecting me to come running, drawn by the scent of comfort and nostalgia. Each time, I'd acknowledge the gesture with a polite, distant, "Thanks, Sarah," before quietly making myself a sandwich or ordering takeout. Her frustration was palpable, a silent current in the air. But she never confronted me directly about my lack of reaction. One evening, I received a text from her. "I miss you, Alex. This is so hard." 'Twas ambiguous, designed to elicit a flood of desperate calls or texts from me. I stared at it for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the reply button. A part of me, the part that still yearned for the comfort of her presence, wanted to respond with equal desperation. But the stronger, more wounded part of me saw through it. This wasn't genuine remorse. It was a prompt in her test. I closed my phone, leaving the message unread, and went to bed. The silence of the house pressing in around me when someone tests your love. They often underestimate your capacity for self-preservation. They expect you to crumble, to prove your devotion by sacrificing your own dignity. But true love, real respect, demands more than that. It demands honesty. And when that honesty is absent, when the foundation is built on manipulation, the instinct to protect your own shattered pieces becomes paramount. You realize that sometimes not responding is the loudest response of all. Liam was my anchor during those days. I met him for coffee at our usual spot, a small, independent cafe with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. He listened patiently as I recounted the surreal breakup, the quiet packing, Sarah's increasingly transparent attempts to draw me back in. It's like she wants me to break. "Man," I admitted, swirling my lukewarm coffee, "she wants me to beg. But I can't. I won't." Liam nodded, his gaze steady and understanding. "Good. You shouldn't. You deserve better than to be someone's pawn." He didn't sugarcoat it, and I appreciated that. Liam had always been the pragmatic one, cutting through. Emotional fluff to the heart of the matter. "This isn't just about a breakup, Alex," he said, pushing his mug aside. "This is about trust. She's capable of putting you through this, of hurting you like this, just to test you. What else is she capable of? And more importantly, can you ever really trust her again after this?" His words, though painful, resonated deeply, affirming the quiet conviction that had begun to form in my own mind. The clarity that comes from a trusted friend's perspective is invaluable. When you're caught in the eye of an emotional storm, it's hard to see the true landscape. A good friend doesn't just offer comfort. They offer a mirror, reflecting the hard truths you're too afraid to acknowledge on your own. They help you articulate the inarticulable pain, giving shape and meaning to the chaotic emotions swirling within. With Liam's support, started making tangible plans for my future. I found a small, sunlit apartment on the other side of the city, a place that felt neutral, unburdened by shared memories. Signing the lease felt like a physical act of liberation. A statement to myself that I was choosing to build something new rather than cling to the ruins of what was. I began packing in earnest, labeling boxes, donating items, systematically dismantling our shared life, not with anger, but with a weary resolve. Sarah watched me, her silent presence a constant heavy weight in the background. She tried escalating her tactics. One afternoon, as I was loading boxes into a rental truck, she stood in the driveway, tears welling in her eyes, her voice trembling. "Alex, please, can't we just talk? Don't leave. I made a mistake." The words, though seemingly genuine, felt hollow. I saw the panic in her eyes, the raw fear of losing control, but the echo of her earlier detachment was still too strong. I simply nodded, my expression neutral. "We are talking, Sarah, and I am leaving." It's a peculiar kind of strength you discover in the face of manipulation. The more someone tries to pull your strings, to orchestrate your emotions, the more you retreat into an inner fortress of self-respect. Their desperation becomes your quiet power. You learn to discern between genuine emotion and calculated performance. And that discernment becomes your shield against further harm. The day I moved my final boxes out, the air was crisp, the sky an almost brutal blue. Sarah was there, standing on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, looking small and fragile. I avoided her gaze, focusing on the heavy boxes, the finality of the act. As I was about to close the truck's rear door, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe, Sarah's friend. "Saw you at the coffee shop with a blonde yesterday. Guess you're moving on fast." Sarah's heartbroken. The message was clearly meant to sting, to be seen by Sarah, to prod me into a reaction. I tucked my phone back into my pocket, a quiet sigh escaping me. The coffee shop meeting had been with a new colleague, Maria, a brilliant software engineer I was collaborating with on a new project at work. It was purely professional, but, of course, Sarah's desperate surveillance channeled through Chloe would twist it into something else. The thought barely registered as a pang. It was just another confirmation of her manipulative approach. The twisted logic of someone attempting to control a situation often backfires in spectacular ways. They try to provoke a reaction to confirm their own narrative, but in doing so, they only reveal the depths of their insecurity and desperation. It's like setting a trap for someone only to realize the bait you used is poison. And you're the one who will ultimately suffer its effects. As I finished securing the last box, I saw Sarah flinch. She had seen my phone, seen the text, and her eyes were now fixed on me, wide with a potent mix of hurt, jealousy, and utter panic. She took a step towards me, her face contorted. "Alex, who was that? Are you already seeing someone else?" Her voice was tight, a desperate, almost accusatory whisper. I turned to her, my face devoid of expression. "It doesn't matter, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet but firm, carrying the weight of a decision already made. "We broke up, remember? Yeah. You said you needed more, and I'm giving you exactly that. More space, more freedom. A chance for you to find whatever it is you're looking for, without me." I saw her jaw drop, her eyes filling with unbidden tears, not of heartbreak, but of pure, unadulterated fear. The test had gone spectacularly wrong, and she was only just beginning to realize the irreversible consequences. The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. More space, more freedom. It's a chance for you to find whatever it is you're looking for without me. I watched Sarah's face crumble, the dawning horror in her eyes giving way to unbridled panic. The test she'd so carefully orchestrated had backfired spectacularly, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. As I stepped away from the rental truck, the quiet click of the closing door was a resounding finality, a stark contrast to the chaotic storm now raging behind her once composed expression. I drove away, leaving her standing alone in the driveway, surrounded by the echoes of her shattered plan. There's a strange, almost surreal quality to seeing someone's carefully constructed world shatter right before your eyes, especially when they were the architect of their own undoing. It's not about triumph. It's about the unsettling realization of how fragile perception can be. How quickly control can slip away when you're playing games with real emotions. And for me, seeing Sarah's panic wasn't satisfying. It was just ... sad. A quiet confirmation of how deeply she had misunderstood the very foundation of our relationship. The drive to my new apartment was a blur of highway lights and the constant thrum of the truck's engine. Each mile put more distance between me and the ruins of my old life, but the quiet hum of betrayal still resonated in my bones. Liam met me at the new place, his presence a comforting anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. He didn't ask questions, just helped me carry boxes, a silent testament to true friendship. Later that night, sitting on an unpacked box, a cold beer in my hand, I finally let myself feel the full weight of it. The profound hurt, the indignation, the bitter taste of being used as a pawn in a manipulative game. Sarah's texts started. Almost immediately after I left, a flurry of desperate, please, frantic apologies, and confused questions. Alex, please talk to me. This isn't what I meant. You can't just leave. Each message was a fresh wound, twisting the knife further into an already bleeding heart. She was still trying to control the narrative, to dictate my reaction, even from a distance. I left them unread, a silent defiance against her desperate attempts to reel me back into her game. It's an odd form of power, isn't it? To witness someone's desperation when they once held all the cards. They expect a specific response, a predictable emotional breakdown. But when you offer quiet resolve instead, it disarms them completely. It forces them to confront the true, unfiltered consequences of their actions, unclouded by your expected reaction. And in that disarming, there's a strange, bitter liberation for you. 2 days later, the incessant buzzing of my phone finally broke my resolve. It was Liam, not Sarah. Dude, Sarah just showed up at my door, bawling. She said she needs to talk to you. Like, really talk. She's saying it was a test. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I had suspected it. A test? My life. Our marriage, all a test. The quiet dignity I'd maintained gave way to a surge of pure, unadulterated anger. I agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop, the same one where Liam and I usually met. I needed answers, not another one of her manipulative performances. When I walked in, she was already there, huddled in a booth, her face pale, eyes red-rimmed. She looked fragile, almost broken, a stark contrast to the composed woman who had delivered the breakup line days earlier. This vulnerability was new, unsettling, and, I realized, designed to elicit a specific reaction: pity. There's a profound difference between remorse and regret. Remorse is about the damage you caused to others. Regret is about the consequences. You face yourself. When someone who has hurt you suddenly appears fragile and remorseful, the immediate instinct is to soften, to offer comfort. But sometimes you have to dissect that emotion to see if it's true remorse or just regret for a plan gone horribly wrong. She started talking before I even sat down, a rush of words tumbling out, almost incoherent in their desperation. I am so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It was a test. I just wanted to see if you'd fight for me, if you still cared enough. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as it hovered near mine. I pulled my hand back, a quiet, almost instinctive movement that made her flinch. I let her speak, letting the words wash over me, a tide of belated explanations and self-pity. She talked about feeling neglected, about needing reassurance, about an insidious insecurity that had festered beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. She articulated a feeling of being taken for granted, of wanting to feel desired, to know that I still valued her enough to fight for our relationship. It's a bitter pill to swallow, hearing the detailed blueprint of your own humiliation. The casual revelation of such a profound betrayal of trust that your love, your commitment, your very heart were merely variables in someone else's desperate equation. You realize how little you were truly seen, how carelessly your emotions were treated. And that realization cuts deeper than any breakup ever could. When she finally paused, breathless, her eyes fixed on mine. Waiting for a reaction, I took a slow breath. My voice, when it came, was quiet, devoid of the anger that churned inside me. A test, Sarah. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. You put our entire life, our shared history, our future, through a test. You let me believe my world was ending. You let me grieve a future that you intended to put on pause, just to satisfy your own insecurities. My gaze locked onto hers, unwavering. Do you have any idea, any concept of what that did to me? The sleepless nights, the nausea, the raw aching emptiness of believing I had lost the only person I loved. I packed my bags. I found a new apartment. I started to dismantle everything we built, not because I didn't care, but because I believed you. I respected your decision. I respected you. The last word was a whisper, laced with the bitter irony of it all. The quiet anger is often the most potent. It doesn't dissipate in a shout. It settles deep within, hardening your resolve. When you confront someone who has betrayed your trust, and they offer only self-serving explanations, your silence becomes your most powerful weapon. It forces them to confront the chasm they created, not just between you, but within themselves. Sarah recoiled, her face paling even further. Alex, no, I didn't think. I thought you'd come back immediately. I thought you'd fight. You always said you'd fight for us. Her voice rose in a desperate plea, but it was too late. The words felt hollow, like a child's tantrum. I saw the raw, exposed nerves of a manipulator whose strings had been cut. I fought for us for 15 years, Sarah. I said, my voice still quiet but firm. I fought by showing up every day, by being present, by trusting you, by believing in your honesty. That's how I fight. I don't fight by playing mind games. I don't fight by emotionally abusing the person I claim to love, just to make myself feel better. Each word was a deliberate hammer blow, chipping away at her false narrative. When the truth finally emerges, stark and undeniable, the immediate instinct for the perpetrator is often denial, deflection, or a desperate plea for understanding. But the real healing, the true path forward, demands accountability. It requires them to look honestly at the damage they've caused, not just the discomfort they feel from its repercussions. And holding that mirror up, even when it's painful, is an act of profound self-respect. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I'm so sorry, Alex. I don't know what I was thinking. I was afraid of losing you. I needed to know. Her voice was muffled by her hands, but the underlying desperation was clear. She needed to know, and her way of knowing was to shatter my world. You took away my choice, Sarah, I stated, my gaze fixed on her. You robbed me of the chance to walk away with dignity, believing it was a mutual decision. Instead, you made me a victim of your own insecurity, a participant in your own humiliation. And now you want me to simply forget that? To erase the past few days, the pain, the profound sense of betrayal. I leaned back in my chair, the chill of the coffee shop settling into my bones. I can't just go back to how things were. That trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. The weight of shattered trust is immense. It's not just about lies. It's about the feeling that the ground beneath you is no longer solid. That the person you relied on to be your anchor is actually the one who cut the rope. And when that realization hits, the path back, if one even exists, is not an easy one. To climb up a very steep, very slippery slope. With no guarantees of reaching the summit, she lifted her head, her eyes wide and pleading. What can I do, Alex? Please tell me. I'll do anything. I'll get therapy. I'll prove it to you. Her desperation was raw, unmasked now. She truly looked lost. But that desperation didn't erase the pain she had inflicted. It didn't magically mend the fractured trust. "You need to give me space, Sarah," I said, my voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Real space, not a test. Not a negotiation. I need to figure out who I am without you, without us, even if that us was a lie. I need to decide if I can ever trust you again, not just in words, but in your actions. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of metal on tile echoing in the quiet cafe. "I'm not coming back to the house. Not right now." Sometimes the most profound act of self-love is to walk away from what continues to break you. Even when the other person is finally showing the vulnerability you craved. You realize that your healing isn't contingent on their remorse, but on your own commitment to self-preservation. And walking away, even temporarily, is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of necessary grace, a way to reclaim your own narrative. Her eyes widen further, the last vestiges of hope draining from her face. "You're leaving permanently?" she whispered, the raw fear evident in her voice. The test had been designed to make me fight for her, to prove my love. Instead, it had pushed me towards genuine separation. And she was now faced with the terrifying reality of her own making. The empty house, the quiet nights, the life she had gambled away. Now staring back at her in the cold, stark mirror of my absence, I simply nodded, my gaze unwavering. I need to. For me. I stood up, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders with a heavy yet strangely liberating force. She watched me, her face a mask of profound regret and dawning terror. The woman who had meticulously planned her breakup test was now utterly alone. Faced with the overwhelming consequences of her own destructive game, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. It wasn't a legal document, just a list of bullet points I had written down in the quiet hours of my new apartment. I thought about what it would take, what I would need. Not to go back, but to start over, with eyes wide open. I unfolded the paper and slid it across the bench to her. "This is what rebuilding trust looks like for me. No more games. More tests? Just truth, and a lot of very hard work." Sarah's eyes scanned the list, her face reflecting a mix of apprehension and dawning comprehension. The conditions were clear, uncompromising, and demanding a fundamental shift in her behavior and her understanding of our relationship. She looked up at me, her gaze lingering on the paper in her hands. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight. Of her decision, the list of conditions lay between us on the park bench, a stark testament to the chasm Sarah had created. Her face, a canvas of apprehension and dawning comprehension, reflected the monumental task laid before her. The silence that followed was not the quiet of a paused game, but the heavy hush of a profound crossroads. She picked up the paper, her fingers tracing the bullet points, and for a long, agonizing moment, I watched, uncertain if she would crumple it or embrace it. Brutal truth. There's a unique vulnerability in presenting your terms for reconciliation. After a deep betrayal, it's not about being punitive. It's about safeguarding your own shattered pieces. You offer a blueprint for rebuilding, but you also acknowledge the immense effort required, in the very real possibility that the other person might not be willing or able to undertake such a monumental task. The ball is in their court, and you can only wait, holding your breath, for their response. Sarah's silence stretched, marked only by the rustle of leaves in the park and the distant murmur of city life. She didn't argue, didn't try to negotiate. Instead, she slowly folded the paper, her gaze lifting to meet mine. There was still fear in her eyes, but beneath it, a new flickered determination. "It's a lot," she finally whispered, her voice hoarse. "But you're right. It's what's needed." She took a deep, shaky breath. "I'll do it, Alex. All of it." The words were not a promise, but a declaration, heavy with the weight of her commitment. That meeting was the first step on a long, arduous road. Sarah immediately immersed herself in therapy, not just the casual sessions Liam had mentioned, but intensive, focused work on her insecurities, her need for validation, and the manipulative patterns she developed. She started being meticulously transparent, sharing her calendar, her thoughts, even her anxieties. Something she'd rarely done before. It wasn't easy. There were frustrating days, moments of regression, and the raw discomfort of unearthing buried emotions. It's a brutal truth that growth often demands tearing down old structures before new ones can be built. For Sarah, this meant dismantling the very coping mechanisms she'd relied on for years. The process of genuine self-reflection is rarely pretty. It's messy, painful, and often humiliating. But it's only by facing the uncomfortable truths within yourself that you can truly begin to heal. Not just the wounds you've inflicted, but the ones that led you to inflict them in the first place. My role in this period was one of cautious observation. I didn't immediately move back in, nor did I offer instant forgiveness. I needed to see consistent, undeniable action. We met regularly, not for dates, but for difficult, honest conversations. I voiced my doubts, my lingering hurt, the moments when her past actions still echoed in my mind. She listened, absorbed it, and responded not with defensiveness, but with renewed commitment to change. She began to understand that trust isn't given. It's earned, inch by agonizing inch. I saw genuine changes. Her desperate need for my reaction, that frantic urgency, began to subside. She started finding her own validation, focusing on her own emotional well-being rather than seeking it solely from me or through external tests. She volunteered at a local animal shelter, something she'd always talked about but never made time for. She reconnected with old friends, building a support system that didn't revolve around our relationship. She was rebuilding her own life, not just for me, but for herself. There's a difference between someone doing what you ask and someone doing what they genuinely need to do for themselves. True change isn't a performance, it's an internal shift. When you witness someone actively and consistently choosing to grow, not just for your benefit, but because they understand the inherent value of their own transformation, it sparks a fragile, hopeful realization. Perhaps, just perhaps, the broken pieces can find a new arrangement. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the chasm between us began to narrow. The conversations grew easier, less fraught with tension. There were moments of genuine laughter, glimpses of the Sarah I had loved before the test, but now overlaid with a new maturity, a quiet strength. One evening, after a particularly raw therapy session, she called me not to apologize again, but just to share an insight she'd gained about her own childhood insecurities. It wasn't about us, it was about her. And that shared vulnerability, that raw honesty, felt like a bridge forming between us. After 3 months, Liam, who had quietly observed our interactions, finally spoke up. "She's really trying, Alex," he said during one of our weekly coffee meets. "I've seen it. It's not the old Sarah. She's different." His words from my most trusted confidant carried significant weight. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the packed boxes that still lined one wall. They no longer felt like a prison, but a choice. And for the first time, I felt a strong pull towards the other choice. The path of healing is rarely linear. It's filled with detours, regressions, and moments where you question everything. But when you look back and see the consistent effort, the undeniable growth, and the willingness to confront deep-seated issues, a fragile hope can begin to blossom. It's not about forgetting the pain, but about learning to build something new, stronger and more authentic from the rubble. I called Sarah. "I think it's time," I said, my voice steady. "It's time to come home. Not to the old home, not to the old us, but to start building something new together." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by a quiet Sob, "Are you sure?" She whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't deserve this." "No," I replied, "you don't deserve a free pass. You deserve the chance to earn back what you threw away. And I deserve a partner who is genuinely committed to honesty, not tests. It's going to be hard, Sarah. Harder than anything we've done before. But if you're truly in with no more games, then so am I." The following week, I moved back into our house. It felt both familiar and strangely new. The furniture, the rooms, the garden, everything was the same, yet infused with a different energy. The silent presence of manipulation was gone, replaced by a cautious, fragile sense of shared intention. We started slowly attending couples therapy, establishing new communication patterns, making a conscious effort to rebuild trust brick by painful brick. There were rules now. No more unspoken expectations, no more assumptions, absolute honesty. Even when it was uncomfortable, true reconciliation isn't a magical forgetting. It's a conscious, deliberate choice to build anew, acknowledging the scars but refusing to let them dictate the future. It's about understanding that love, real love, doesn't need tests. It needs trust, vulnerability, and the courage to be fully, imperfectly seen. And in that raw authenticity, a deeper, more resilient connection can eventually emerge. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Our relationship bore the scars of Sarah's test, and those scars would always be a reminder of the fragility of trust. But they also became a testament to our resilience, a quiet proof that even from profound betrayal, something stronger, more honest could be forged. Sarah never stopped working on herself, consistently proving her commitment, not to me, but to the kind of person she wanted to be. And I, in turn, learned to extend a different kind of trust, one born not of naive acceptance, but of cautious observation and a willingness to believe in the capacity for human change. The process of healing continued, one quiet evening at a time leading us toward a future that was both familiar and entirely new. The house, once a silent witness to a shattering, slowly became a sanctuary of rebuilding. The conditions I'd set, transparency, therapy, genuine effort were being met by Sarah, not with grudging compliance, but with a raw, undeniable commitment. Her face still showed the strain of the work, but the fear I'd seen after the test had been replaced by a quiet determination. She was transforming, and with every small step she took, a fragile hope within me grew. It's a strange phenomenon, isn't it, to watch someone you deeply loved and then deeply resented begin the arduous process of true change. It's not a sudden flick of a switch. It's a slow, deliberate chipping away at old habits, old fears. And as you witness their dedication to growth, a cautious optimism begins to stir within your own wounded heart. You don't forget the pain, but you start to believe in the possibility of something new, something stronger, rising from the ashes. Sarah's consistency was key. She never missed a therapy session, openly shared the insights she gained, and tackled her insecurities head-on. She'd talk about her deep-seated fear of not being enough, a fear that had driven her to seek validation through manipulative tests. Hearing her articulate these vulnerabilities without excuse or blame slowly began to mend some of the cracks in my trust. We continued our joint therapy, too, where we relearned to communicate, not with hidden agendas, but with brutal honesty and renewed empathy. I found myself increasingly drawn back into our shared life, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire. We started cooking together again. These evenings filled with quiet conversation about our days, about the small victories and frustrations of rebuilding. The silence that once magnified her deceit now felt comfortable, punctuated by genuine laughter. She started doing things not because I asked, but because she knew they mattered, tending to the garden we'd neglected, initiating conversations about our future plans, always with a new, transparent sincerity. There's a subtle but profound Difference between someone acting apologetic and someone truly embodying change. The former is about words. The latter is about consistent, undeniable action. When the person who hurt you genuinely commits to self-improvement, not for your forgiveness, but for their own integrity, it's a powerful testament. It's the first real step towards transforming a painful past into a foundation for something meaningful. Liam, my steadfast anchor, noticed the shift too. You guys seem different, he observed one afternoon when he visited. Better. It was a simple comment, but from him, it was high praise. His approval, born of his pragmatic nature, meant a lot. It wasn't a return to naive trust, but a rebuilding based on demonstrated effort and a shared understanding of how easily things could be broken. One evening, as the sun set, painting our living room in hues of orange and purple, Sarah suggested we talk about what us meant now. She wasn't pressuring me to forget, only to define our new reality. I know I can't undo the past, Alex, she began, her voice soft but firm. And I know trust isn't magic. But I want to earn it back every single day. I want to build a relationship where neither of us feels the need to test the other. Where our love is built on honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the insecure woman who planned the test, but the brave woman who was rebuilding herself, piece by agonizing piece. The scars of betrayal were still there, invisible yet present. But they were no longer gaping wounds. They were fading, becoming a part of our story. A reminder of the lessons learned. The deepest form of healing often comes not from erasing the past, but from integrating it into a stronger present. You don't forget the pain, but you learn from it, and in that learning, a new kind of strength emerges. The strength to face difficult truths, to accept imperfection, and to choose to build anew. Even when the path is uncertain. It's going to be a different kind of love, Sarah, I replied, reaching for her hand. Her fingers, which had once trembled with desperate manipulation, now gripped mine with a quiet, genuine firmness. One built on conscious choice, not just comfort. One where we both actively work to keep the honesty alive. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Tears not of regret for being caught, but of profound gratitude for the chance to earn back what she'd lost. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, no sudden rush of emotions sweeping away all the pain. It was something more profound, more real, a quiet, determined commitment to rebuild, to learn, and to grow. Together, our relationship bore the indelible marks of Sarah's test, and those scars would always serve as a reminder of the fragility of trust. Yet, they also became a testament to our profound resilience, a quiet proof that even from the depths of betrayal, something stronger, more honest, could be forged. Sarah never ceased her journey of self-improvement, consistently demonstrating her unwavering commitment, not just to me, but to the kind of authentic individual she aspired to be. And I, in turn, learned to extend a different kind of trust, one born not of naive acceptance, but of careful observation and an unwavering belief in the human capacity for genuine transformation. The healing process continued, one quiet evening at a time, guiding us towards a future that felt both familiar and entirely new. My wife had pretended to break up with me as a test, okay? And what she didn't expect was my reaction. But what I didn't expect was that her test, though painful, would ultimately force us both to become the truest, most resilient versions of ourselves, pushing us onto a path we never imagined. A path that led not back to what was, but forward. Together, but profoundly transformed. It was a testament to the fact that even when the foundations crumble, the choice to rebuild with honesty and unwavering effort can lead to a stronger, more authentic connection than you ever thought possible.